My Gavanen Melonin, and well met indeed. I'm Arkir Galadurthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to Divide and Conquer, as we continue on as the faction, kingdom, realm of Gundabad in the north. Things are getting a little spicy, to use a want of a better word. As you'll note, the dwarves are encroaching upon our lands after either having been beaten back from their attempt at Dane's Halls. No, because they would have retreated that way. So they're sending a scout out for some reason. Captain Baragor. You'll note that the Anduin still controls the Upper Vales, of course. And Goblin Town, that's scum. But the dwarves don't own Dane's Halls yet. They're just walking past it. But it's worrying nevertheless, because we are still fighting Angmar. This gentleman here, Overlord Avgaz, represents pretty much Angmar's last hope for survival. Their realm has now been beaten down to very, very little. You'll note that they still have Morvatarth, which is over here somewhere, and they may have Camathbrim, we do not know at this moment. But certainly in the west, we are looking at maybe Bari Donyonak, Gobadrain, and the one up here, which is called, I think, Fuerost. But it's unlikely they have little more than that. They're probably down to 4 or 5 regions. So they really are at their last breath. We have an army in the north that will happily mop up those 3 things there, and our army in the south, being led by our faction leader, is more than enough to take down Avgaz, which is our current plan. Nafshak is heading back to Nokhvaraklaw, which we had abandoned to the enemy, but they didn't take it, so we've moved back in. Otherwise, though, an army is being trained to deal with the threat of the dwarves and to perhaps move out into Dane's Hall. So we shall end the turn, press the spacebar, and hope that all goes well. I've seen people comment a couple of times now, and to be honest, I didn't think the change of the morning was all that different, but a few people have commented to note that sometimes my voice sounds a little off, and it's led to a few people telling me I either sound unwell or that I'm just generally sickly. But no, it's just that it's the morning. At the weekends, I try and record in the morning to get it out of the way so that I can then do whatever I want all day and not have it hanging over me like the sword of Damocles. And in the morning, my voice is always croakier. It's just the way it is. Is it not the same for everyone? I just naturally assumed it was. But if it isn't, then it isn't. But that's why sometimes it's a little raspier or a little throatier. No, thank you. Sorry.
Get ready for fighting. Kill them all.
No, we're not going to be fighting that. No, lost. On rare occasion that happens. Maintain the siege. They've only got 2 turns. There's no point stressing ourselves out.
Listen up. Pick your feet up.
We will continue to press, though. Avgaz needs to die. I don't know about Morvatarth. We could send an army out, I suppose. But build us a watchtower as you go. We've got to take down Muzgash first. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, of course, the Khan just stood with the Astari, didn't they? So they're now at war with Mordor, Harad, the Easterlings. And Bree and Enedwaith have gone to war. And Khand have allied with Gondor and Dol Amroth. The Blue Wizards have spun their magic. They're clever folk. Oh, a spy. That's a good idea. Have we got another one? No. Right, you there. Head out towards... Yeah, so Bari Donyonak is definitely held.
This way.
And Fueros, there it is. Oh, it's quite a large size. But what I need to know is have they gone further than that. So head out over there. And Shtun, give me a spy. We'll send him into the Tarth. Into the Ettenmoors. There we are, where the trolls come from. Otherwise, that's pretty much an end turn. What did the dwarves do? They've stood still. Always worrying. We'll wait until we get those 2 units and we'll move on Dane's Halls and see what we can see. I'm pleased with the reception to the developer diary number 15 now that Angmar are really coming together. People seem to be quite on board with the change. I'm very on board with the change, obviously, so I'm all for it. I did note, however, that people, again, always manage to astound me. I explained in that video, I believe, no less than at least 2 times, possibly even 3 times, that Angmar are still a work in progress. They're not finished yet. There's a lot to be done. And yet we got at least 3 comments of people telling us that the portraits of the generals are still orcs. And it's just like, you're just bashing your head against a wall with with this public interaction thing. I think, if anything, this minor interaction with a very small segment of the population has shown me that I could never ever go into any kind of public office because I just can't handle it. I can't deal with people who don't wish to seek the answers for themselves and rely on others to tell them everything. I know that makes me sound like some sort of intellectual snob, and I apologise for that, but it's how I have always been taught and how I have always been brought up to seek the answers myself. And it's alien to me, to people who just immediately post a question without even the most basic level of research. And obviously it's not restricted to modding and gaming. You see it all the time on YouTube, particularly as I delve deeper into Reddit. There's so many people that post things that are so easily debunked with a very simple search of either the internet or just asking another human person. Are we losing money now? Oh jeez, yeah. Are we at war with the dwarves at the moment? No, we're not. Of course, this is the before we when version 2.3 comes out. You will be at war with the dwarves if you play as Gundabad. We should attack Avgaz. We need to kill him. It's going to be a massive battle, though. Oh, we can't actually reach him. He might attack us, then we might get a boost there. And there's nothing for it. War with the dwarves is inevitable, so we might as well try and take Dane's Halls now, and which is an easier location to defend, and pushes the border much further out. We will be able to put watchtowers closer to the Dwarven Heartland and get a better warning system up and running. I don't wish to sound cynical or grumpy is the fear, because I suppose the problem is that I often use the YouTube video and the YouTube outlet as a means of clearing one's chest and one's mind and getting all the things that annoy you about, specifically mod related. But then that just means that in most videos I'm just moaning about something. Anyway, Rural come and they bring a small unit of orcs, 2 units of hillmen who are trash, Rural raiders who throw javelins, so watch a little bit. The 2 units of axemen are a threat. They are strike infantry and dangerous. 7 orc fellas is nothing. Our own army though has plenty of ranged opportunities, and as we have seen many times in this campaign, our archers are supreme. Sorry, no. Our archers are supreme. And that is, of course, the warning sent to the Númenóreans by Manwë, telling them that they should not even think about coming west. Oh, here they come. Oh, I'm dilly-dallying. Stop dilly-dallying. Archers! Snow orcs! Scats! Snow orcs! Come out of the halberd. Where's the fight? Form a line! Get the javelins in behind. No one's running away, please. You get ready to flank left, and you get ready to flank right. Everybody into positions now. I tell you what game I did get in the Steam Summer Sale, because they had both of them for £5, is Metro 2033 Redux and Metro Last Light Redux. And I've been playing 2033 because I had a little read online and it suggested you should play 2033 first, for otherwise the story might have a few little holes or bits and pieces. And also, as I say, I got both of them for a £5. For reference, I think that's at the moment about $7, about €6. Something around that. The exchange rate with this whole Brexit nonsense is in the absolute garbage. When I was younger, I went to Florida. When I was a lot younger, 13. That was 15 years ago, Jesus. I'm aged and decrepit now. 14 years ago, sorry, I'm not 28 yet. And I went to Florida, and the exchange rate was insane. And it always then gave me an impression for much of the rest of my life, as we humans do, basing our information on a single point in time and never changing it. Oh, I forgot about them. They throw javelins too. And the exchange rate was mental. It was so good. It absolutely blew my mind. Back then, the pound was almost like, it was almost £1 for $2, which obviously is brilliant. given that the pricings were relatively the same. So actually, once you got to America, you had plenty of money because your money was worth more. But of course now it's almost 1 for 1, and it's just mind-blowing. But then obviously we can't attribute that all to our own errors. It's also the successes of America over these years, I suppose. It also astounds me that the euro's doing so well. Obviously I'm not an economics student at all, and I try and avoid politics at all costs. Because I appreciate that, unfortunately I'm cynical, and whilst I appreciate when there are things in politics you don't like, you should try and get involved and change it, but who really thinks that that is actually possible? There's plenty in politics that I absolutely loathe, particularly the fact that not a single politician normally, certainly in my experience, ever actually gives one bleeding damn about the country they profess to represent. And it is literally just, how can we get the voters to keep us in power next voting time? And it drives me up the wall, absolutely up the wall. And take Brexit, for example. Brexit is a huge decision. It's going to have massive economic repercussions regardless of how you see it, whether you voted in or out. It's going to affect everyone in one way or another. And it's not the kind of decision you should throw open to people who maybe don't even have secondary school level education. It should have been based on expert analysis and their resolution. For example, they should have said, right, it's going to affect you in this way, this way, and this way, but for example, you may return power for yourselves in this regard or that regard, and rather than just opening it to people who don't even know, like, their 8 times tables, and you just think, how is this possible? End of battle. And I'm not suggesting, of course, that analogy applies to both, whether you voted in or out. There are people who were not informed on either side and just voted, obviously, with their hearts. It's like, you can't affect an entire nation in such a way. It should be done more intelligently. But anyway. But of course, and the reason I use that as an example is because any politician who actually cared about the country would then take information that is now presented to them from a purely intellectual standpoint and make an actual standing and say, now, for example, I agree that obviously we should go with the will of the people, but when the will of the people is so uninformed, surely that should have some bearing. And also, when the result of the vote was so close, can we really base the future of our country on a result that was like 1% swing either way? Surely it should be a majority thing, or a larger majority thing. I don't know. I'm not heavily for either side, I must confess. I've put my head in the sand and ignoring the whole thing now. Because obviously nothing is now going to change, and the result is the result. There's no point whining about it. I should just prepare myself for whatever the outcome is going to be. But it's an example of politicians simply now vying for just making sure their parties come out of it in the best light rather than ever acting for the people. And I think that's true the world over, and so I have no desire to get into politics, and so I simply ignore it, and I detest talking about it whenever I can. And this little speech on it is the only such speech I shall give, and that is just for example's sake. At least we did get attacked, though. Sorry, segueing there rather poorly. We got attacked by them. I can't remember why I started talking about politics. Something to do with money, probably. We don't really have much of a hill, but it's the best we've got. They had a lot of men from Rudar. The men of Rudar. Should we take this time to dispel some Angmar myths, which I've said many, many times, and many of you will already know, but we'll go for it anyway. When humans first awoke, they awoke like the elves in the east of Middle-earth, at a place called Halathirion. I think they awoke at... No, Halathirion is the burial mound of Elendil. I can't remember where they awoke. Hole in my knowledge there. And many of them headed west. Of course, many of them then crossed the Blue Mountains into the lands of Beleriand. And there they took sides, with some siding with Melkor, of course, in the famous betrayal of the other humans, or they betrayed the sons of Feanor. And many of them siding with the elves, who eventually then, of course, became the Númenóreans. But not every human crossed the Blue Mountains. No, no, no. Some of them remained in Middle-earth, and it is of those that we turn to for Angmar. You lot are all going to be flankers. We'll see what we're going to do with you in a moment. So with the fall of Beleriand, many of the forces of evil and the forces of good did flee across the mountains before the land was sunk beneath the sea by the onslaught of the armies of Aman. Interesting tidbit for you there, something I'd never really thought of before. There's an extensive debate as to whether or not the armies that came from Aman were only elves and Maya, and if in fact the Valar did not take part in the War of Wrath, the final battle. And the reasoning for this, the largest point in the favour of this theory, is that Eonwe is sent to lead the forces of Aman, and he is not a Valar. Suggesting that if the highest level of leader sent is only a Maya, then it stands to reason that surely the Valar, with an R, did not come. Which I'd never even considered, you know. It's because, as I say, whilst I like knowing generally the backstory of the First Age is not what drew me to Middle-earth, and it is not what holds my attention. In the same way, the analogy I always use is that you can be a historian focusing on just Rome and know absolutely sod all about, say, World War II, but you're still an historian. And that's the argument I always make. I can be a fan of Lord of the Rings without knowing every single detail, and I frequently do not know things about the First Age because I just simply don't read up on it. It doesn't interest me as much as the other ages do, so sue me. They definitely did attack us, didn't they? What are they doing? Oh no, they're just doing that formation thing where they just run around. Anyway, so at the War of Wrath, Beleriand is sunk beneath the sea. Whether the Valar lead that is up for each person to decide themselves. And many humans, as I say, do escape. The Númenóreans, or as they are then the Dunedain, or the Edain, sorry, become the Dunedain, men of the West. They become the Númenóreans. And they go off and live out the Second Age themselves. But at this time, of course, humans who remained behind, who never crossed over into Beleriand at the start anyway, of those are the men of Angmar. I would heavily suggest, however, that it was probably either not called Angmar at that time, or if perhaps the name was created for the main story that happens in Angmar. Because Angmar means Iron Home, and the Witch King is famous for having an iron crown, and it seems too good that it all suits. Unless, of course, the Witch King took his names based on the region he was now taking. They definitely did attack us, right? We're definitely the defenders here. No. No, we're not. God, I am such an idiot. How many archers do they have? Just move the whole line up. Everybody go. Well, otherwise, your time is going to run down. So, the point I'm trying to make is that Angmar was a home to humans long before it was a home to orcs. And there's the theory, prevalent though it is that when the Witch King came, he brought orcs with him. And those are then the orcs that because it is undisputed that there were orcs fighting for Angmar in the War of Angmar and Arnor, which we shall now call the War of the North. And so we know that there were orcs, we know there were humans. The humans were there first, is the point I'm making. After the defeat of Angmar in 1975 of the Third Age, at the first of all the fall of Fornos, and then the defeat at the hands of the Gondorian king, or soon-to-be king, general at that time, who is called the Arnor, I believe. And of course Glorfindel, who famously prophesies the Witch King won't die soon, and far off is his fate, and not by the hand of man shall he fall. So in 1975, Angmar falls, and it is then said that the army of Gondor, with Lindon, the army of the elves, then destroys every evil creature west of the Misty Mountains. And the suggestion that DaC then takes at this point, this is where the divergence occurs, is that we suggest that certain number of orcs do at least survive, or that the Misty Mountains returns to Angmar in time, because the humans of Angmar and the men of Ruadaur are not cleansed. So Ruadaur remains as a little human sanctuary north of Imladris, fighting really independently. And the men of Angmar remain in Khazad-dum, waiting for the time to exact vengeance on the Númenórean descendants, who of course came and wiped them out. And then into this setting of men of Ruadaur licking their wounds and Angmarim cowering, but waiting, orcs return from the Misty Mountains, and thus the remnants of Angmar is formed. But the humans now retain a larger stake. Now, the reason that this is all important... Oh, I'll tell you what we're going to do, actually. Give it a pause. Let's just line everyone up and charge the entire line in and show our dominance. I want one massive line, please. Go for it. I know they have the hill. But, get Mazov and the Wargs over there. I don't think they have any counter to us. I don't think they have any ranged units. Ah, they're coming down off the hill. Well, now we charge to meet them. If you aren't engaged, I shall send you into a flanking line. Go for it. Right, we've got a unit over there that's avoided the... Get the wargs out. Run up the middle. The other generals? Yes. Flank around to the northern side. So that's Angmar's backstory. It's also, of course, the main reason why we changed Angmar is to make Angmar more unique. So that they aren't just, again, a kind of featureless faction in the north. Now, some have suggested that they didn't feel that this was actually a problem. But to those that actually play as evil nations, I would welcome your comments below suggesting whether you feel that indeed Angmar were just a superfluous version of Mordor / Dol Guldur / Isengard, and they had no actual thing that stood them out as their own faction. And also, we do, as was pointed out, we've got an evil Númenórean faction, the R.R. Dunayam. We've got an evil Wildmen faction, Dunlendings, but we don't have an evil normal human faction. We use the term Northmen, but really we just mean the standard non-Númenórean descendants, and also not Wildmen. So essentially an evil Rohan / Dale. That's what we don't have, but now we do, and I think it's going to make the changes. I think it's going to make Eriador a much more interesting place. Now, I see many questions of people asking how is this going to affect the dwarves, and that is, of course, a valid fear, a valid question. And so far, Angmar is not yet ready, and we've done no testing, so I don't know how it's going to affect the dwarves. Apologies if you were hoping for a little more there. My gut theory would be that Angmar are going to be better now, because we've given them more armor-piercing units and more cavalry. And granted, cavalry isn't that effective against dwarves because of their high mass stat. But it is still cavalry, and they are still infantry. It will still do the job. So you should see, I think, that Angmar is a little better now at holding back the dwarves. Now, changing sides of the map completely, something that I've seen posted very recently and just posted many, many times is that Rune is still acting as something of a powerhouse in the east in many, many campaigns. And with the rise of Gundabad now taking some attention of Erebor away, it is likely that Rune are going to be even more powerful. And so something may well have to be done in the east to make sure that either Dorwinion is able to hold on for much, much longer, or that Rune is simply nerfed to a point where it's like 50-50 whether they or Dorwinion die. But then, of course, if Rune dies, Dorwinion then normally always washes the floor with Dol Guldur and then turns on Mordor, thus defeating Mordor. But of course, it doesn't really matter at a point. It just doesn't matter. The game's length, generally, is normally about 150 turns. Now, you might gasp at that, but 150 turns, if you play every battle, is something like 10 to 15, maybe even 25 hours of gameplay. And if that is not enough for a single campaign, then good goad. That's not a word. We'll go with it. Then good goad. I don't know what else we can provide for you. But take my R. campaign, for example. We're now on the 57th episode. Every episode is roughly 30 minutes, but I think there are at least 10 of them that are an hour long. So before we even get off the ground, we are 30 hours in, and that episode, I think, is at about 280 turns or so. So, and if the 200 turn mark, sorry, not 150, if the 200 turn mark is roughly where we kind of expect the player to then have either won or lost definitively, then I think that is bloody good going. If you're getting 30 hours out of a game that came out 13 years ago, then you're doing something right. And that's not just a one-off number. That is a single faction. And then you might play as another faction and get another 30 hours. So I'm really not bothered about trying to make the campaigns last 300 or so turns. So at a certain point, factions are going to have to die. And if factions die relatively early, then so blooming be it. I'm really not concerned. I know a lot of people take a lot of umbrage with Gondor dying early, but as I say, I'm just not concerned. I don't think they die too early, and that's the crux of the matter. Charge the archers in, what the hell. Keep it at ×6. You're only really charging in to try and break the last ones. So overall, I think we're doing all right. In 2.3, though, something I've just not even thought of when I was just talking about Rune then, we have actually edited Rune quite substantially. And so in your versions, 2.1, yes, they might die, they might become all-powerful all the time. But in 2.3, Rune have been nerfed quite substantially, and Darwinian have been buffed. And so we're not overly concerned. But then, if we'll look and see, and we might make some other changes here or there. We only lost 1,218, and the disgusting filth of Angmar lost 200 and lost 2,000 and something. Sorry, 263 was the most amount of kills, with a Snowwalk Raider unit taking that mantle. Well done, everyone. Well done. I'm pleased to have done this recording today, because today is day 2 of Ed and Jess's, which is my girlfriend's name, if you've never known. We live together in central Bedfordshire. It's our day of fun. And by that I mean, over this Christmas period, we've both had a week off work. My office closes over the Christmas period, which is brilliant, so I always get the week off. Whereas Jessica starts a new job in January, so she's had the week off anyway. And today is the second of 2 days where we have nothing planned. Absolutely nothing. And by that I mean literally nothing. On the first day, I awoke at about 10 AM because I'd gone to bed late. And I proceeded to do nothing other than play computer games until I needed to pause for sustenance, and then continue to play computer games until I needed to pause to sleep. Now, obviously, that's like the quintessential explanation, or not explanation, quintessential picture of a neckbeard, of course, is a person who does nothing but play computer games, not even breaking to clean oneself, and merely pausing for food. But and of course I appreciate that, but I would counter that with the fact that I only get 2 of these days in an entire year, and so I absolutely love it when they come.
Get ready for fighting.
Weekends, of course, there's always things to do. Cleaning the house, shopping, food shopping, I mean, not general shopping. Visiting friends, visiting family, returning to our hometown, all the above. So we don't get these days very often, and today is the second day. Although if you count doing this recording as a thing, then even today isn't a day of nothing, because I've done this recording. But I think we have just broken Angmar. That victory, we'll try and skirt around the dwarves. That victory, I believe, sees the end of them. Ah, the Anduin have taken Cameth Bryn. You scum! Goodness gracious, we are beset on all sides by these fools. Ugh, That annoys me. Really annoys me. Not only do they have the gall to take the Goblin Town after we killed the defenders, they've then crossed the mountains and they've taken Cameth Bryn. Are we at war with the Anduin? We're not, are we? No, of course, because they didn't take it from us. They took it from, like, vultures. They bled the carcasses dry that we cleared for them. Now, we need to go on to Fueros, but at Fueros we will border. Now, I really want to train Ruidauer troops, because it's not available in... or in 2.3, it's still available in 2.3, actually, sorry, because I love Ruidauer so much, so that feature is going to remain. But Angmar need to die for us to be able to train the men of Ruidauer, but I don't want to border the dwarves, not on two fronts. We're just not ready. Although with that, losing 1,000 orcs, our army size is reduced. But Angmar now, if I'm not mistaken, have 3 towns left. Fuerost, Baridonionach, and Morvatarth. Now, Morvatarth, we don't have an army anywhere near, and Chief Shaka, sorry, their faction heir, could actually do some damage because we don't have anything to counter him.
Listen up.
So, a small contingent of this army,
Get ready for fighting.
under Mazog, is going to have to go east. So, take a couple of archers with you. Them. Men of Ruidauer, one of them.
Get ready for fighting.
You're going to have to go east and kill Chief Shaka and take Morvatarth. Grishnak, you move on to Govardrine and link up with Gerzog. And you will hold here for now and we'll assess our options. But we're doing well. We are doing well. Of course, the Northern Dunedain will attack us soon, and then so will Ered Luin, and so will Erebor, and likely so will the Anduin. So it could all come crashing down very shortly. But for now, that is where I'm going to end today's episode, trying as ever to keep to 30 minutes. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Apologies if I've ranted a little. I mean, of course, no political offence whatsoever. If you voted out of Brexit or you voted into Brexit, you are still my brother from the United Kingdom, and we shall stand against many foes, as we always have done. And of course, I hope to cause no offence there. I hate talking about politics, but it was just to discuss my point of view in regards how flawed the system is. But for now, that'll be all. So thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have. And until we speak again, dear friends, Navar in Eden, Penimad Melonin, and farewell. I am now off to play Metro 2033, and I hope today to complete it and find out how Artyom's story will end. By then playing the one immediately after it. We shall see. Farewell!